Good morning, everyone. This is week 2 of facility and design, or facility design for the food and nutrition management program. My name is Steve Hilborn. So this is our first week of actual class. The idea of this is that you should be watching this particular video before our class on Tuesday, and then as we go through everything, you'll have a good background knowledge. And the idea for all of our classes is that while I will go through and debrief some of the video lecture, maybe talk about some of the more important or complex ideas and points, you will have already this working knowledge. So here today, what we're going to be doing is that we want to go through what is considered Chapter 10 in your text, which is the planning procedure. We go over the prospectus and the feasibility study. Menu analysis, which could be an in-class activity should we ever get in class. And then we look at a little bit of the structural materials and some budget and cost relationship stuff. Now, the idea of this is that as a food and nutrition manager, you might be going into a situation where you have some complete control over developing menus, changing layouts, changing equipment, and really reworking the entire workplace, or coming into a new workplace where a lot of this isn't already established. So the idea is that we're going to go through some of this background on how you would start. So the first one is that you want to, these are the steps in the planning prospectus. As you can see, there are 6 different steps. We'll go through each individual one and talk a little bit about the important factors or the important parts of each of these steps. The first one being the prospectus. So the prospectus is a fairly detailed account. It's a written description that details a project and typically consists of 3 different parts. First is the rationale. So this is the title and the reason and the need for the project. So in our particular class, what we'll be doing is that we'll be doing a redesign and redevelop of the Georgian dining room at Georgian College. So it probably was designed 20 years ago. It's not functional. There's a lot of wasted space. It's not necessarily ideal for what we're trying to use it for. So we're going to talk about goals. We're going to talk about objectives, some of the policies and procedures that we might have. And this kind of gives you just that framework to start with. What are we trying to achieve? The next is the physical and operational characteristics. So these are any of the designs and the features. This is all the detail about the menu, food prep and service, who our employee is, what does our customer look like, what's their age range, what kind is, if they have disabilities or they have any special requirements, what's our volume of business. So are we breakfast, lunch, dinner, so a full day of plus snacks, or are we just a dinner operation only? And then, of course, our regulatory information, which we touched upon last week a little bit. But then there's also some built-in sanitation and noise control and energy use and all the other stuff that comes along with that. So really, the prospectus is talking about in one larger document, why and what are we doing, what are the details about it, and what are the really important things that we have to ensure that we complete. So when you are, usually what you'd be doing is that you'd be working with a client. So the client is probably the owner or manager of a long-term care, retirement center, or really any food and beverage operation. Could be a resort property, you name it. So some of the questions that you would first of all ask is what type of food service is planned. So is it buffet style? Is it plated? Is it seated? Is it stations? There's all kinds of different. What's the menu? What food service production is used? How many people are served in a period of time? How is the food purchased? What storage areas do you have? What equipment do you need? What are the desired space relationships? So by space relationships, I mean, where do I need different areas to be located beside each other? There's some very standard space relationships, whereas as an example, where you bring in your food is usually you need to have a receiving area, and then really close to that receiving area, you would need to have cold fridge and freezer and dry storage, right? So that's just a very logical. Food comes in the back door. We look at it, we weigh it, we make sure we got the right stuff and that it's still quality, and then we store it where it needs to be stored. What persons with disabilities are there? What energy sources? What's our budget? So budget is obviously a huge one because if you have an unlimited budget, there is no problem too big. And then also what kind of safety precautions do we need to understand? Then we also need to develop a planning team. So the planning team may be many different people depending on the size of the operation. So it should include the owner, the food service manager. So this could be you. While you may be a food nutritional manager, you also just might be a food service manager as well, right? So you might help write the menu, but you also might help the operational side of delivering the food. So ensuring that it's cooked properly, it's sent out to the tables, that your service staff is doing their job, that your kitchen staff is doing your job. You are sometimes not just wearing the food and nutrition manager hat only, but many different hats. There could be an architect that's involved depending on how much design that's required, as well as maybe some food service design consultants. And then there's the builders and the contractors and maybe an engineer. Each member should know their role, and you should have a time checklist with responsibilities. We often call this perhaps a critical path, and which basically means a critical path lists all the critical steps that you need to complete on a time frame in order to complete a project. And then you will be responsible for, and as in this project, you will also be responsible for creating a new floor plan, selecting some building materials, writing specifications. So this could be what kind of equipment is being used, what kind of width you want all of your aisles and your traffic areas, choosing equipment and furnishings, and then also perhaps selecting some of your vendors. Now, it is important to know a lot of this stuff, if you're coming into a location that's already in existence, the majority of the stuff will already exist, right? You might not necessarily need to select building materials because it's already built in a certain fashion. So you would just be repairing or replacing to match. Same with the floor plan. There's already probably a floor plan created. So what you'd be doing is maybe editing and just rearranging the layout and the furniture as you can. You may not have the ability to take down walls and increase area. So the feasibility study is exactly that. So you're wondering if this is a feasible project and can you achieve the goals and the objectives that you previously stated in your rationale. So with a new proposed facility, so let's just say that we are creating a new long-term care center here in Barrie. So you have to understand, what is the proposed site? Maybe what is the community growth? As we know, Barrie is, an ever-expanding community. Our distance to the GTA and the GTA is also expanding means that we are a commuter community or a bedroom community. So we're always going to be increasing, and we have a fair influx of an international community as well. So when I moved to Barrie, I don't know what it was, 2004 or 5, we were 100,000 people, 90,000 people. We're double that now. We're probably closing in on that 200,000 mark. So there is some very big community growth, and you can expect in the next 20 years probably to be 400,000 people. So there will be growth, there will be need. So these are all some of the market trends. And you look at the potential revenue sources. Now you also have to look at this not only in the scope of long-term care retirement homes, but also just maybe as a restaurant. So what are our potential revenue sources for a particular restaurant? What is the competition in the area? So if we want to do a fine dining Italian food place, we would make sure that we look at not only all fine dining restaurants that exist in the area, but more specifically, all the fine dining Italian places, right? And then also look at some of the new technology. If we are redesigning an existing facility, what we want to look at now is some of the current operational standards. So how do they run their business currently? We want to take a look at some of their issues and opportunities. So what is the issues that are affecting the business? Where do we see the low-hanging fruit, as they call it? What are the opportunities? How will this impact our current customer? And is the current customer the customer that we want? We often try to build a place with a customer in mind, a style of customer in mind, but sometimes we don't always get it right. So if that current customer is the one that we want, and if we want a different one, how would we address that? We may also want to look at additional revenue sources. So while we may have been doing okay up here, how can we bring in more revenue? So maybe this is opening more service times, staying open later, changing our menu, changing our food options, increasing our wine list. There's many different ways that you can add additional revenue sources. You'll see a lot of restaurants have even gone on to the product side, where the keg, as an example, not only do they sell all of their food and their steaks and everything else, but they will sell their ranch dressing, they will sell their steak spice, they will sell keg prime rib burgers, and all these are kind of a frozen or pre-packaged good. And then some of the feedback from the clientele that you currently have, and then also talk about innovating procedures. So the thing is, sometimes it doesn't make sense to bring in new technology because it's just not available or it's not financially feasible. But what you can is innovate some procedures. So you already have a process or a system in place. So can you upgrade it? Can you bring in maybe a new technology to make this a little bit more seamless, or would that be too much? So it's a little bit different when we're looking at a new proposed facility because everything is done for the first time versus looking at an existing facility and we're kind of handcuffed and shackled to some of our ways that we can change this up. My voice is okay. So menu analysis. So menu analysis is one of those steps as well where we want to take a look at the menu and analyze what is happening there. We will look at some menu engineering techniques later on, but basically the menu drives the layout and the menu also drives the equipment requirement. So you can't design a kitchen and then design a menu. And if you do, it is probably going to have a poor result because the requirement of the different styles of equipment are all based on the food that you will be making. So you first have to start with the menu, have a good firm idea of what different food options you are offering, and then you are able to figure out what kind of equipment is required. Now the thing about this as well, which makes it difficult, is that the menu often changes. Usually every 3 to 6 months, in a food and beverage commercial operation, they'll change their menu. In a long-term care retirement home, you might have these static, evolving menus. So every single day or week they change, but every 6 months or so, you might take a look at it and say, okay, we're no longer offering fish and chips on Friday. We're going to sub it out with something else. So it's one of those things that you have to ensure that you have the flexibility in your design and your menu analysis to do those things without having to bring in new equipment. So this process where all key equipment is decided upon, the prospectus should contain several days' menus as well as menu patterns. So that's the number of items that are ordered, the popularity, the time of service, things like that. Menu analysis also needs to look at some of the following criteria for the food items. So as an example, what is the style of storage that is required to cook this food? So do you bring the product in frozen? Is it fresh? Does it need to go in a fridge, a freezer, or dry storage? So your menu will also dictate your storage requirements. We also look at portion size and table portion, the batch size. So the batch size is a portion size is how much an individual is served. A batch size is the size of the recipe. So as an example, if we make a chicken noodle soup, we don't make a single serving chicken noodle soup. We make 20 portions. So 20 portions would be our batch size. We also look at the process required. So all the different pieces of equipment that are required, as well as the timing and maybe different areas. Same thing with utensils. What work surfaces are needed, what large pieces of equipment, and these are usually means where heat is added to a food element, and also holding equipment. And what often happens is that a lot of this food is prepared in advance and held to keep warm. Specifically in long-term care and retirement centers where you might have 120 residents coming down all for food at noon. And what you basically need to do is that you need to pre-cook and prep vegetables and rice or potatoes or whatever it might be and hold those hot. So when they come and when they want to be served, you're able to do so and it's hot and delicious. And then same thing for room service as well. We can't get to all the rooms at the same time. And making it to order just is not really practical. So basically what they do is they use that holding equipment as well. So what will happen is that you will come up with something like this. So this is our menu analysis. So right here, this is just two different items to give you an idea. So one is a spinach salad and one is a beef patty. So when we look at spinach salad, I believe we're talking about just the actual spinach itself. So the portion size is 1 ounce. The table portion is 2 ounce. The batch size is 100. So 100 portion sizes. The process required for spinach is that we have to wash, trim, and drain. We would require a knife in a drain pan on a sink and a counter. We need sink and a counter for large equipment, and the holding equipment would be the refrigerator. So this gives you an idea of all the different pieces of equipment that's required. And then same thing with a beef patty. We bring it in frozen. It's a 4-ounce beef patty that we purchase 50 4-ounce beef patties, and each table portion is 1 beef patty. The process required to cook it is to just grill it. We may need a spatula to flip it and to serve it. The work surface is a counter utility cart and a grill, and then perhaps a warming oven if we pre-cook off 30 burgers, and then we're waiting for people to come in and order them. Now this will give you an idea of what a menu analysis looks like for a full dish. Okay? So here we have our 8-ounce sirloin with a baked potato, green beans, and roasted red pepper. This is a keg meal, and basically what they're doing here is that they're looking at all the different portion sizes, table size, and batch size, and the requirement for you, and maybe we'll look at this in class, would be, okay, how do we identify the storage type for all of these? Then all the processes, the utensils, the work surface, the equipment, and the holding equipment. What the goal of doing something like this would be is that I can do a menu analysis of all my different items that I serve in my restaurant or in my food cafeteria, whatever it is, and I can tell you exactly how many items require a fridge, a freezer, dry storage, how many items use the deep fryer, the grill, the stove, a saute pan, how many items need to stay in a hot warming oven or a hot holding area or a cold holding area, and really break down a menu based on equipment requirement and also utensil requirement. So we might need tongs for 15 different dishes. So ensuring you have more than 2 sets of tongs is going to be really important. So this is a good way for us to do a menu analysis and really break down what are the requirements for equipment and smallwares, which I consider knives and forks and spoons and ladles and all the other stuff. Then we also have to look at architectural features. So this, you must consider the overall building style and materials. We have a functionality requirement, but we also have an aesthetic requirement, which means it must look nice, right? All of our places, either people are paying for an experience or paying for service. And even if it's long-term care and retirement home, there's still a level of aesthetics that must be considered. And if you're looking at commercial operation where people voluntarily come in and pay, you really need that aesthetic component to be nice. So these overall design decisions will have large implications on not only the cost, but also cleaning, sanitation, safety, lighting, temperature, all of these things. And the following information is a basic principle in regards to many of these design features. So flooring, it must meet a certain utility and durability requirement. It should be impervious to moisture, grease, food stains, and slip resistance, such as it's actually what we see a lot of times in long-term care and retirement homes, that we see a lot of carpet in dining rooms, which is not necessarily ideal because it soaks up all the moisture, grease, food stains, slip resistant. although it is a little bit more comfortable and there's more grip on it than sometimes our tiled floor. So this is one of those situations where you would never have carpet in a commercial operation. You may have carpet in a retirement home for the sake of ease and comfort for the guests. And if they fall, it's a little bit padded. It's a little bit softer on them. So that's one of those. Most of these things, these are rules and you have to follow them. When it comes to flooring, there might be a way that you say carpet and this is why. And I would say understandable. Common considerations when choosing flooring though, hard floors are good for resistance, but they're slippery when wet. And they're also hard on employees' feet. The rough abrasive floors, so sometimes they'll line it with like a stone or a grit. They're safe, but they don't clean easily. Carpet is comfortable for the guests, bad for food stains and grease. And hardwood is beautiful and elegant, but it's porous, which means it absorbs water. And then it also can be very expensive. Tile is probably the most popular in kitchens, and it can be easy to replace and durable. And all kitchen floors must go up on the wall 6 inches. Okay, so when we're talking back of house, it makes perfect sense to do. This is that flooring that has that grit to it. Okay, so it's a little bit more difficult to clean, but it's very, very safe, and they will not be falling. And as you can see, it has like a little bit of a texture to it. This one here is just some tile flooring. This is a little bit more dangerous as far as if it's wet, it can be very slippery. Everyone should be wearing slip-safe shoes anyways in the back of house. And we must really set aside back of house from front of house, because the back of house is function, the front of house is aesthetic and function. So the back of house is the kitchen, and this is really where you need easy to clean, easy to see. And as you can see, I like the brighter tile here myself, but either of these would work. Now, when you're looking into a front of house, this one here is a nice hardwood, or it could be a fake hardwood. Either way, it's beautiful, it's easy to clean, it can be slippery when wet, versus something like this where it's not slippery when wet, it's a lot more comfortable on people's feet. It's softer if they do have a fall or a spill, and if you spill water, it's going to soak it up. But it's also, you expect to have to replace this quite often, whereas in this kind of flooring, you might not ever have to replace, or in 20 years, you might have to replace it. And then this one here, maybe every couple of years, you might have to rip up because it'll get soggy, it'll get wet, it'll get gross, it'll get smelly. But it's safe. Walls and ceilings. So when we think about the floors, that's a lot of traffic. But when it comes to walls and ceilings, they're a little bit different. So they must be covered and easily cleaned with no joints, wires, or pipes. So this must be done to be approved by health units. Okay, so they have to be nice and clean. Walls and kitchens should be covered with a durable material that is not porous. So nothing that's going to absorb water. So tile, there's a fiberglass reinforced panel, so it can't be drywall. It should be, sometimes you'll have people put up drywall, and then they'll put this fiberglass reinforced panel over top of it, and it's like a very thick plastic almost. You can do stainless steel, which a lot of people do. It's very expensive. Or a wallboard with an enamel or glossy or semi-gloss treatment as a minimum. Ceiling height should be 14 to 18 feet on average. Should be lighter in color. And as you see, you want to treat the ceilings and walls in the front of house specifically with material. So if you ever went into a gymnasium and it's super loud and echoey and noisy, so if you go into a restaurant or you go into a food service situation that has no material, it doesn't absorb any sound. So it's very loud, it's very noisy, and specifically with residents at long-term care retirement homes where they might have, they're hard of hearing, the din and the crash and the noise of everything in the background might be too much for some of their senses. So we try to put stuff. Even here in the ceiling picture here, you can see this is essentially, they've just taken 1 by 1 pieces of wood, built little rectangles, wrapped them in fabric, and put them up on the ceiling. But basically what that's going to do is going to stop all the echoing and the noise transfer. So lighting is considered one of the most important parts of design. So lighting must be adequate for working spaces, but also nice and suitable for guest areas. So we measure light in what we call a foot candle. Okay. So when you think about a foot candle, it's a 1 square foot sphere. So 1 foot by 1 foot. And basically you have a light source at the middle, and that's considered a 1 foot candle. So as an example, if you stare directly into the sun, it's 10,000 feet candles. It will blind you eventually if you just keep doing that. An overcast day might be 100-foot candles. So this is where we want to use natural light as much as possible, because natural light is free light, and we pay a lot for lighting. Intensity and color of light is also application specific. So fluorescent lighting in back of house is preferred, and incandescent or halogen in serving areas. Basically, fluorescent lighting it's bright, but it can glare. It's reflective, and the incandescent or halogen lighting, it is not as bright. It's a little bit more dim or dimmable and doesn't have that huge glare and reflectiveness. And as you can see here, there's this fluorescent lighting up here in the ceiling. It bounces off all this material, but it makes it really nice and bright and easy to work in this area, where rather this incandescent lighting, it's kind of a little bit muted and a little bit more dim. So this is some of the design spaces and the amount of light intensity that you should have. So for fine dining, which is usually quite a dim area, 15 to 20. Same with some of the walkways and storerooms, about 20. Kitchens are usually about 30 to 40. Fast service and cafeterias are 40 to 50. And then if you're reading recipes or weighing or measuring or working on a computer or writing in a book, you want anywhere from 7 to 150. Keep in mind the reflective nature of several materials. Mirrors, glass, stainless steel, all this stuff reflects a lot of light. And then indirect lighting is often used in dining spaces. So I'll give you an idea of what indirect lighting means. So as you can see here, all of this lighting, it's muted or it's redirected, so it's not shining on anyone in particular. They have lighting above the slatted roof. They have all of these lights here, so they're shining up or they're shining down. And they have just candles on the actual tables themselves. So again, the lighting is not necessarily in anyone's eyes. It's not reflective, and it gives you really a nice kind of feel and appeal to the space. Same thing here. This is what we call a very intimate setting in fine dining. Here, your eyes would adjust and you would eventually be able to see fine, but it's quite dim. All of their lighting is shining up. They have pot lights in the ceiling, but they're facing onto the walls. And the same thing underneath this picture, just onto the picture itself, but there's no lighting that's necessarily going into anyone's eyes directly. I love this particular slide because this is also what lighting can do to a space to transform it into something that it is not. So if you look at this area, you would think that's a lovely patio. But the thing is, this patio is completely located inside a big building. And what they've done by using different features, so you have here this nice wood wall, this fake green live living, it's not living, this fake green plant. You have a couple indoor trees, which are probably fake as well. And then they have strung the lights to kind of mimic what a patio light would be, a starry night. So they have created a patio that looks like the outside inside. So it's a year-round patio. It looks beautiful. Really high ceilings, and as you can see, lighting really made this space what it is. This here is one of those kind of industrial elements and industrial designs, and what we're looking at here is that they had because of the reflective nature of all this piping up in the ceiling, all these mirrors, all this stuff that they have to be concerned about, what they did is when they put their lighting up, they also built in a couple panels to kind of deflect some of that, so it's not glaring on everyone's eyes. It's still very bright. It's very well lit. Probably too well lit if you ask me for a bar. But it's got its own different appeal, and that's the way that they did here to try to combat some of the reflective nature that they're showing. So right here is just a floor plan. It gives you an idea. This is a lighting floor plan. So basically what's happening here is that once you have your regular floor plan of whatever a house or a restaurant or whatever it is might look like, then what they do is that they put in like an overlapping cover, which shows where all the lighting would be. So electricians would use this. The expectation is that not that you will need to have a lighting floor plan for our major design, but you should have an idea of the style of lighting and what it'll feel like on the inside. Okay, and so this also is a big legend about all the different movements and all the different types of switches and the electrical runs that they need to do. Again, we're not going to be designers, we're not going to be architects in this course, but what you do need to do is understand the requirement of lighting, understand that lighting makes the space. It most definitely does. So having an idea of what kind of equipment and fixtures you would like in your redesign will really help you set the tone and set the ambiance for the place that you design. Next thing we talk about is heating, venting, and air conditioning. So HVAC, as they call it. So HVAC is about providing a comfortable work environment and a safe work environment with proper filtration. It improves efficiency for anywhere from 5 to 15% because when people are too hot or too cold, they don't work well. Placement of air ducts. So this is especially important. So when you place your air ducts, so it could be a cold air out or a cold air return, you basically want to set it so customers do not get blasts of cold air. Usually what happens is that all these air ducts are done in advance, so then it's all about the layout. So ensuring that you know where the airflow is coming down, so ensuring you don't put a table right underneath that so they get sprayed with cold air all the time. Especially important for our clients that maybe have heat control issues or temperature control issues. Maintaining humidity is very important as well for the comfort of the employee and guest, especially important in dry areas or moist areas, but also important for your own health. So making sure you don't get too dry a throat like mine is right now, or making sure you're not too much in a moist environment, which can be conductive to diseases. And then also positive versus negative air pressure. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I think I have this will show you a little bit better about it. So positive versus negative air pressure. So when we think of this, usually we refer back to a hospital setting. So when you have a negative air pressure, basically it's pulling air in. It's sucking air in. So as you can see here, this room has a negative air pressure, which means more air is being pumped out of your vents into the hallway than it is into the room. So when you open this door to this room, the hallway air is coming into the room, okay? Versus the opposite, if you pump more air into the room and less into the hallway, when you open the door, then the air from the room will go into the hallway. Now, why this is important is because when it comes to specifically into two situations, one is contagious disease. So if you have a contagious disease, such as COVID, you would want the inside air staying inside the room, and you want positive air out into hallways. So this is used in a hospital environment quite often, where all of the outside air in the hallway can come into the room, but the COVID-infected air perhaps in this room will not go out. Okay. Immune-compromised people would want a positive air pressure in the room because they don't want any outside germs, traveling germs, people walking in the hallway. So immune-compromised people would have a positive airflow, so their air in this room would be pushed out versus the outside, unclean, unfiltered air coming in. Now, we look at it from also a weather perspective because when you think about a restaurant, when you open and close those doors to go outside and inside, and if you look at it outside right now, it's a snowstorm, you want positive pressure inside the dining room. The dining room usually leads to the kitchen. The dining room leads to the outside, right? So having that positive air pressure in that dining room means that when that door opens, instead of getting those cold blasts of air coming inside your restaurant, you're pushing your climate-controlled warmer air outside. Also, when you think about positive airflow in the kitchen, you open the door to the kitchen, you either can have that hot air full of smells and noises and everything else coming out from the kitchen and the dining room. That would not be ideal. So again, having that positive air pressure in the dining room will push that cold or push that dining room air into the kitchen, keep the heat in, keep the smells in. So it gives you an idea of, this is something that we usually don't think about. And all it really has to do is that when you are pushing air through your vents, you are ensuring that the vents that are located in your dining room are pushing more air than the ones in your kitchen. That's it. But it's remarkable the difference in how much the effect is. And then, of course, it comes to the final step, is the budget or cost relationship. So unlimited budgets are rare or never in existence. Budgets are lower than this is when budgets are lower than either quantity or quality will be affected. So some costs may be negated by lowering operational costs or lowering labor, such as an example of, if I invest into a proper piece of equipment, I will lower my labor cost, even though that equipment is very expensive. So that is when the investment makes sense. You may be able to increase level of service with some of these costs, or lower labor, which is fantastic. Poorly designed food services have employees spending at least 10% longer accomplishing work. So when you think about the walking distance for certain areas, when you think about from in a kitchen, if you're walking to the walk-in fridge and freezer all the time to get more products and it's not located close by, if the plates are too far away, if your utensils are too far away, it really matters on how you set up your kitchen, and then also how you set up the bar area specifically, and the general flow of traffic in the front of house. Okay, and these are all the things that we're going to be looking at. And we'll be looking at them using Microsoft Visio. So when you are able to start up and install Microsoft Visio, you'll be doing a few things. Right now, I'll just go through and show you exactly how you set up a template and how you get it started. And then when we're in class together, I will introduce the program and really get into some of the different ways that we can play around and work with it. So when you start up Visio, it'll give you a bunch of different options to do, and you can do all kinds of stuff. I don't even know the depth of the resources and different things that you can do with this program yet. It's quite in depth. But what we will be using it for is mostly our floor plans. So you'll be creating a floor plan by clicking on floor plan. And then it's going to ask you in metric or US units. And I'm going to say, please go with US units. Okay. So that's going to be inches and feet versus meters and centimeters, stuff like that. In Canada, we have a weird system because although we are metric, our building codes require inches. So we go by inches when it comes to design. Next thing is you're going to do is that on the top tab here, you're going to have, or top ribbon, you're going to have a bunch of different options. You're going to go to design, and then you're going to go on the left top hand side, you'll see this page setup. If you click this little button right here, what's going to happen is that this page setup is going to show up. What you're going to do is you're going to go to drawing scale. And then on the drawing scale option, this is where you're going to set your page size. So I will often give you an idea of what we're looking for. We're going to design a small bedroom. We're going to design a front of house, a large bar area, whatever it might be. So in this particular one, what we're going to do is that we're going to create a 20-foot by 20-foot room. Now, typically I would say, okay, put 20 foot by 20 foot in there. Now what I'm going to say is actually put more size in there. So if you want to create a 20-foot room by 20-foot room, great. Put in 25 feet by 25 feet. Give yourself 5 feet on either side, and I'll show you why. So the next step is then you creating this. So this is going to give you a 20-foot by 20-foot. Now, if you create a 25 by 25, essentially what you're going to do is just have a little bit more room all around. And then if you wanted to, you're going to start creating. So you can pull in a room, you can pull in all kinds of shapes, and this is where that class will really help you on Tuesday, because I'll show you all the different templates and how really to use this program. But as you can see here, when I pulled in a room, when I only made it 20 feet by 20 feet, it fills up almost all the space, and it kind of gives you no room for doors opening or labeling that might fall off the side a little bit. because when I save this as a PDF, when I print it, it only prints the white area. So you want to kind of give yourself a nice border all the way across. So 5 feet on each side should be more than enough. It'll also have lots of different templates for you. So these are some templates. You can see that there's furniture, and there's cabinets, and there's bath and kitchen. There's appliances, there's gardens. We can do all kinds of stuff with this, as well as we can create our own shapes. As an example, there's not a deep fryer option. But what is a deep fryer when you're looking from a bird's eye view? It looks like a rectangle. And if you put a rectangle down that's the right sizing and you label it deep fryer, that is now a deep fryer, right? So while we have the majority of all of the shapes and sizes that you are going to need, we can also just create a lot of our own. So here you can see there's just a bunch of furniture, cabinets, and I'll show you how to get all of those soon. So that's where I'll stop it. When we are in class, please watch this before class. I hope you are. When we are in class, what I'll do is I'll kind of real briefly go over the first week and two of material, just see if you have any questions on that. Go through the syllabus, start talking about assignments, and then I'll show you what we'll do together. Hopefully you all have Visio, and we'll do a training activity through Visio to see how you like it, and we'll do a little bit of design fun. Okay? So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in class.